Look at that. We're live again.
We're live.
We skipped the opener since we were running late and engaged in a great conversation. No Adam. He's in Florida, living it up, doing some State Farm business. So we have Megan Mellis here. She might be Instagram famous. We don't know entirely what the view count was. Loves to use a lockbox as a microphone.
Generous comment. Yeah. Yes, well, that's true, though. The lockbox is true.
So, Megan, you are with
Realty Executives Premier.
Okay. And you service which areas here in Northwest Indiana?
So
the whole region?
The whole region. So, yeah, primarily I am in Cedar Lake, Lowell, Crown Point, St. John, but I do go to Valparaiso, LaPorte, Winfield, so all over. Yeah.
Are you from the area then, Cedar Lake?
I am.
All right. Cedar Lake born and raised?
I was tried and true.
Watch out. You had no relation to the guy running out with the shovel there the other day, do you?
No.
I hate to make jokes about it. I did nearly get ran over by a SWAT tank on 41 going down to deal with that issue. So
you know what? I saw memes on this and I must have just missed it. I'm not
well, I know apparently we got to send a SWAT team because the guy's got a snow shovel brandishing it around, but it's Valentine's Day. What can you do?
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So how long have you been a real estate agent?
It will be, let's see, 2.5 years.
All right. What did you do before that?
So I ran a medical practice in Munster.
Okay.
I was there for 17 years.
All right.
So the joke is like, did you start when you were 10 there? Because I look so young.
So as a plastic surgeon, so you're getting all kinds of deals there. Perfect.
I wish. Orthopedic.
All right.
But I actually wore many hats. So I started at the front desk and I worked my way up. So there was when I left, there was 12 surgeons. We had 2 practices. So there was one in Munster and then one in St. John. All
right. What drove you into real estate then and took you out of that? Was it the no more 9 to 5 or life change? Like what?
Yeah. So the joke is like, I got tired of working 40 hours and I thought, why not work 100 hours? So
perfect. I was going to say that the allure, right, of real estate or mortgage a lot of times is, I want freedom.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you get freedom for about 8 seconds. And then it's, this is 3 times as much work.
It was an adjustment for sure. But to answer your question, COVID happened and my work schedule, I have 2 young kids, was just wonky. I was trying to juggle everything from home. And, the doctors were great about it. They gave me a lot of grace. I was able to work, very well remotely, but we also had 62 employees and, it wasn't setting a good example. It was, I felt it was unfair. I got to stay home. We had other employees with kids and, it just became a bit of a hassle. And like anyone else during COVID, you sit and you have all this time to kind of like, think about your life and your goals and your future. And I was just tired of being held down to a desk. It's just the mundane 9 to 5. And so I always had an interest in real estate, love helping people, working with people. So I took an accelerated course while I was working and, ultimately transitioned full time in January of 2021, somewhere, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever.
Who cares? COVID erased everything. I still date documents 2023 sometimes, or like filling out like a borrower's loan application. I'm like typing it. I'm like, hold on, that tax bill's due in 25.
There's a blur. There's definitely a lag in yeah.
All right. So went from medical field to real estate. We got a couple questions about real estate. What's your favorite thing about being an agent? I know I didn't let you prepare for any of this on purpose.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So my favorite thing about being an agent, honestly, just the fulfillment in helping people find their home, and just that is truly what brings me the most joy, is just being able to help people and
seeing that excitement when they're at the closing table, they're getting those keys. Definitely, I think one of the things that gets overlooked a lot of times in real estate too is a lot of folks feel that stable housing is a right or an assumption, and it's not the case a lot of times. You have a lot of borrowers, especially right now, or buyers that are dealing with horrible situations with landlords raising rents, selling their properties, and just a complete disruptive lifestyle too. And I think that one thing that maybe drives buyers to an agent like you is the genuine approach to how you do things versus the cut dry, not the, I don't know, sometimes people bury the emotion a little bit. I think there's some emotion that goes into it, one. And then as far as like changing their lives from a numbers standpoint, like I love to drive this number that 80 per in a 10-year look back period from 2024 right now. So 2014 to 2024, borrowers and families that were at 80% of area median income that bought a house have 40 times the net worth of buyers that didn't. And that's a real number. And normally, if we look back from like 2014, 10 years back, that number is probably maybe 4 or 5 times. It is now 40 times that. And I think some of that comes into, I want to time the market up to buy a house at the right price point or the right interest rate. We'll dive into that stuff in a second. But tell me your least favorite part about being an agent.
Least favorite part. Oh, let's see. Well, inspections.
They're
tough in that, and I always encourage my clients to get inspections. That is necessary for many reasons. Just the negotiating part of the inspection. When people sell a home, it's like if I'm representing the buyers, first of all, this is their, sometimes they're first time home buyers, they have to learn all this stuff. It's like, whether it's minor or major, just do the right thing, do the repairs. And there's ways we can go about that. We can negotiate, cost to offset it, or you can have someone to repair it. But it just always amazes me, the people that are not willing to just do the work. And most of the times it's little things, it's receptacles or it's, whatever it is. But that is an obstacle that typically takes a bit of, back and forth to try to get.
Yeah, because when you're on the seller side, right, you want to protect your seller, but when you're on the buyer side, you want to help your buyers out, and I'm sure it creates like that in like the laws of justice or the laws of guilt, the gods of guilt type situation, right? Like, if it's this, and I think what happens is a lot of buyers come into houses expecting them to be turnkey, right?
Right.
And then they get this report that's 65 pages of the pictures of everything that's wrong.
Right.
Not the things that are right,
the
things that are wrong. And then it creates this concern, right, for the buyers. It's like, why did Megan sell me this house? It sucks. And it's like, no, let's actually go through this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and that's part of it too. A lot of it is just teasing out all the, they're gonna be, it appears the sky's falling in all of the reports. And this same is true of new construction. There's always going to be things that come up, but, so you really do have to know how to interpret them. But most of the time, we can come to some agreements.
Yeah, I think people are motivated to get a deal done at that point, right? Like it's, okay, these receptacles, they cost 59 cents at Lowe's.
Correct.
And you can watch I know you probably want a licensed electrician to do it, but you can usually watch a YouTube video, and as long as you don't grab the black wire and the white wire at the same time, you'll be all right.
If both parties are reasonable, you get on the other side. Yeah.
All right, so that's your least favorite part. Describe Monday in one word.
For me, unproductive, typically.
All right. And that's because?
And the reason for that is because as a realtor, I work all weekend long. And so my kids are off school. So it's the juggling the sports schedules, dinners and, outside activities, and then working in between it. And so Monday they go back to school. I drop them off. I'm typically in pajamas and snow boots or whatever the weather is. And it's almost like a reset day. So I sit at my desk, open my laptop. I'm catching up on paperwork. Just drinking my coffee slow, it's sort of like my time to like regroup and, set myself up for the week.
You're right. I think a lot of folks don't understand from a sales perspective, right? On Saturday, Sunday for you, it's gathering that funnel, getting as many opportunities there and then sifting through and going, all right, I need to give my dedicated focus or attention to this, this, and this. And when it's when people have a regular 9-to-5 job, it's, I just show up to work and the work's already laid out. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that is a difficult framework or a difficult way for a buyer or a borrower to understand is when a real estate agent or a mortgage person, when they get to work, they have to set they're setting their schedule, they're setting their day up, and it becomes, all right, this is what I got to do. This is what I got to do. Right. So I showed a bunch of people houses on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at, all right, are you ready to make an offer on Monday? Mm-hmm. Right. So that's your Mondays are that.
Right.
And I think that I love your willingness to say that it's unproductive, but it really is actually very productive. It feels ugly sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So we could say Mondays are Sundays or Mondays are ugly, one or the other. what are your 3 big basics in your business? Besides, well, we're gonna have to, one of these better be your Instagram reels and being approachable, but
being approachable. I mean, that's good. So, I try to I'm trying to consolidate my thoughts really to answer that question. I mean, I just the basic fundamentals of my business is really just being true to myself, just showing up as my authentic self. I'm not like a salesy person. I'm, fiercely honest and loyal. And so really just focusing in on, on that and just, I like to be organized and, I don't have this big, like expensive marketing plan. So to your point, I do focus a good amount of my time on social media. I think it's important for clients to really get to know who I am as a person. First. And so I do, these silly reels, and I don't know if they're too goofy or if, whatever, but I have fun with them. It's who I am. There's certainly a serious side to this business. And there's a time and place for that. But I think at the end of the day, I'm also a person, a mother,
Yeah, well, I think that's what people sometimes get lost in. Like, everyone loves the funny stuff. They love humor, right? So why not take the job and make it the lighter side?
Yeah.
It's a heavy business 99% of the time.
Right.
And salespeople sometimes need a little bit of a release. Like, this podcast came about, Adam and I hey, we need to get some stuff off our chest. How do we do it? And it's jumping on and talking to people about things. In your case, it's singing into a lockbox about 2-1 buy downs and all of that fun stuff. So let's talk about that real quick. So the one video that you did, right? You had a buyer that you were negotiating for. You negotiated closing cost credit, and they used that to do a 2-1 temporary buy down. Was that it?
Yep.
So for those of you guys that aren't sure what a 2-1 temporary buy down is, because it's a super technical term, borrower's start rate may have been 7.25. The seller gives us credit. They prepay the interest. So in year 1, interest rate for them is 2% lower. Year 2, it's 1% lower. Year 3, it goes back and forward, goes through the note rate. So what that probably did for your buyer, I don't know if you actually went through the real numbers with him or her, but I would guess probably save them $250, $300 a month in year 1. $350 a month in savings. And so year 2, then that probably gets chopped down to about 125. From the lending side of things, what a lot of folks don't understand is if you do that, you can still refinance if rates do come down. Now, we don't always sell it's super easy to refi, because refinance has to make sense at any point, not just from, hey, I can save you money, but there's all kinds of games that go on in that. And working with an honest, transparent mortgage company, like any of our people at Novus, they would go through and line item that out. And if I'm not gonna pitch my brother or sister or my mom and dad on refinancing, I'm not gonna pitch you on refinancing. But $350 a month is substantial savings, right? And that seller paid closing cost credit, we talked about this a little bit. A lot of buyers don't understand it. It's something that is not very common in the marketplace when inventory is as restrictive as it is. But a motivated seller, right, needs to make their house seem a little more appealing than the house down the street. Right. So how do we do that? Well, we can use a negotiated credit to either temporarily buy down the interest rate or permanently buy it down. At that point, that was probably when that video was early January.
Yep.
All right. So interest rates, the environment was a little wonkier then than it is now. We're starting to move into normalization. So you can also look at doing a permanent buy down, which, maybe at that point, you're not going from 7.25 to 5.25, 6.25 going up, but you're going from 7 to 6, but it's permanent. Right. Where does that money come from though? Right. I think that's the concern, is it's not just rubbing 2 nickels and all of a sudden, a $6,000 closing cost credit just comes out of nowhere. Right. It comes from fierce negotiation tactics on the buyer's behalf. And then also at the end of the day, though, that real dollar amount comes from the seller's sale proceeds. So you represent buyers and you've represented sellers, right? So your seller, you're going through a listing appointment, you get a contract on the house. Okay, here's my offer. Here's what my expected net proceeds are, right? At the end of the day, that's probably what your seller cares about the most. Right. So the seller can go, all right, a lot of my net proceeds, I have this closing cost credit, which is actually funds that we use for the buyer to help them with financing, closing costs, and all that stuff. Because as we've talked about on the show a million times now, the average American has less than $10,000 in their checking or savings account. That money goes a long way. And I don't think that sellers all the time grasp that, and buyers just don't understand. They think it kind of comes from thin air a lot. Right. So if I'm going, all right, I sold this house, my net was going to be 300, but now I'm giving the buyer a closing cost credit of 5,000. So at closing, that seller is now walking away with $295,000, not $300,000, right?
Right. And just to kind of echo what you said too is, it is mutually beneficial in most cases for both the buyer and the seller. And it does take two agents that have a thorough understanding of what the buy down is to communicate back and forth. Because on the seller side of it, it's their job to educate their seller in that the difference between coming 10,000 off the asking price and doing a buy down is significant. You still net what you're wanting to net on the sale of your home, but you're offering them a buy down, which actually makes more sense for the buyer than to ask for $10,000 off the closing, or excuse me, off the sale price in most cases. Because really the focus is what their monthly payment is going to be, right? So that 10,000 doesn't always equate. I think that is a common misconception, is that buyers just assume that going right to negotiating the price is always the best case scenario. But I'm a huge proponent of buy downs for that very reason, because really you're focused on that monthly mortgage payment, right?
Yeah. And if we've talked about this, I think last week we kind of went into the whole monthly payment thing. If it wasn't a big concern, Zillow wouldn't allow you to now filter houses, not just by price, but by monthly payment.
Yeah.
The American consumer is conditioned, and we talked about this last week. Debt to income ratios on files from 1999. I'm sorry. When did we do that? It was 1999 to 2023. Did not deviate by more than 3.5% in that period. And during that period, we had rates at 8%. We had rates at 2.9%. So what does that mean? For a buyer, we have X amount of dollars in this pie, and only X amount or Y amount of that pie are we willing to allocate towards a housing expense. Well, if that buy down, that $5,000 or $10,000, I mean, depending on the home price, right? That puts that payment into the sweet spot or the tolerable amount for that buyer, and they can't really come up with that. And everyone wants to focus on price, but yeah, you are correct. It is, let's focus on the shape of the deal.
Right.
And the focus on price, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Now it becomes, well, do I want to wait because prices might crash or interest rates might come down? Well, fundamentals we've talked about many times on this podcast, and you and I kind of talked about a little bit, right? The media is saying, well, foreclosures doubled between 2022 and 2023. Well, they went from 157,000 to 350,000. And why did they double? Well, there was all these forbearances and all this other stuff that happened in 2021, 22. So it went from essentially zero to a normalized amount. But that normalized amount is 1% of what the foreclosure rate was in 2006 and 7.
Well, and that's also a product of just the nuances of that market in 21. I mean, that's what happens when you're doing, $10,000 and $20,000 appraisal gaps, and you're in a multiple offer situation. It's driving up the prices, and now people may be purchasing homes that they can afford for a short period of time. And so it's cyclical. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this. Obviously,
no, it all goes back to everything goes to what the borrower's income is and where their payment ends up, regardless of price, which I know price and interest rate are a factor, but waiting to time that up is an impossible task.
Yes, I agree.
You either are in a situation where you need to buy or you want to buy. If you need to buy, the time is now.
Right.
If you want to buy, it's still probably a good idea to consider buying right now, because you're going to get my favorite two A's: amortization and appreciation. And that is where you get net worth. Amortization is, I borrowed $300,000 each month. I'm making a small dent at the beginning, a very small dent in that payment, in that loan balance. But we're still seeing, and I think forecast across like 6 or 7 different, between NAR, Realtor.com, Fannie, Freddie, National Association of Mortgage Bankers, an appreciation rate for the next 6 years to be 5 to 5.5% on properties. A $300,000 house, that's $15,000 a year
Right.
that of appreciation. Then you factor in the amortization. All of a sudden, my net worth is increased by 40 or 50 grand.
Right.
So if you're talking to buyers right now and they're a little hesitant, what are you telling them?
So really, again, it just goes back to, it's not a one size fits all answer. It obviously depends on their financial situation and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is that in this current market, we are still negotiating. And I just put a video out on this. So not to sort of sound like a broken record, but, we are negotiating money off the closing costs. We're negotiating home warranties, repairs, buy downs, all of these things. And so, it's a great time to start the process and get ahead of the game. So, come May, irrespective of the interest rates dropping or not, a mass buyer pool enters the market. And all that does is increases competition, right? And that's when you start to see these multiple offer situations and, appraisal gaps. And, you're now offering 10 and 20 grand over asking. You're waiving inspections. You're waiving, all these things. So I personally feel that if you need or want to buy a home, it's a great time to start that process and kind of get ahead of the game. And that's not to sound an alarm, in that, waiting until May is like pandemonium and you're going to be in this crazy market.
It's going to be tulip mania. All of a sudden tulip bulbs cost $8,000.
And that's not the case. But the truth of the matter is when you're working within a very strict budget, it does make a difference buying in this market. Your, inventory is still low. And so when these buyers re-enter the market now, the options are not, plentiful, right? So when there's a nice home that comes up, you're going to have multiple people looking at it. So I feel like I'm skirting around the question, but to directly answer your question, I think now is a great time to start the process. And again, it's not sort of a straightforward answer, right? It depends. It's talking to the clients, getting a thorough understanding of what their timeline is,
Yeah. And I think that's something we've preached on this show all of the time is getting a grasp on your budget. If you are a buyer, if you think that buying in the next 2 years is in your timeline, well, it might take you 190 to 360 days to find that right house.
Yeah.
But you don't know, like it becomes an alarming thing, right? Like all of a sudden, hey, Megan, this perfect house just came up on the market. I don't even know if I can afford it on paper, let alone if I can really tolerate that payment. And I think that's a lot of times when people are being misled by things on Zillow or other online places that post a payment. Click on the double asterisk. Well, are you putting 30% down?
Right.
Do you have a 760 credit score? Is that rate at 4 1/8 really an available rate? Probably not. So they're coming to market. They have this assumption of a payment. They talk to the mortgage person, and now it's like, well, I don't even want that.
Right.
So it's just having that conversation, I think, is the big thing. If it's in the next 1 to 2 years, right? You're not afraid to nurture a borrower along or a buyer along for a year or two, are you?
Oh, not at all. I have clients now that I've been working with for 2 years. Another set that we just closed on, and I've been working with them as long as I've been licensed. So I'm a firm believer in, taking your time. The right home will come along. And, it's your situation can change too in 6 months to a year, right? You can get a pay raise and, that changes your position in the market. Or, again, the market is so cyclical and, we don't know from year to year what it's going to look like. Right. So
it's an election year this year too. I don't know if anyone
look
knew
a lot
that.
Different in November.
I do not know if anyone knows it's an election year or not, but like, one of the things that everyone's talking about, is the Fed going to cut rates? Is the Fed going to hold rates? Is the Fed going to raise rates? We don't really know, except history will tell us that the Federal Reserve does not necessarily make any adjustments to the Fed funds rate prior to an election.
Another interesting fact is they also do not put any indicators out. So I think that you could probably sort of expound on this, but I think people are like, they follow these really economists that in my opinion are the best people to follow, right? They sort of are the predictors and they can kind of give you the what's what, but the Feds are not going to say, hey, FYI in May, this is when rates are going to drop.
Correct.
So we don't know, right?
They use cryptic language and they adjust words. The headwinds is the market, are we seeing headwinds here in the labor market? Are we seeing headwinds with price, all of that stuff? It's never a specific thing. Now, if you kind of follow some other fun things, not necessarily FanDuel or DraftKings, but you can actually go to the CBOE and look at the odds and the percentages based on market stuff. But that's, again, nothing's ever 100% there. And the other thing is there's this misconception that the Fed cuts rates, that it's going to have a substantial immediate effect on mortgage rates. And that's actually not the case. Realistically, what we need to see on the mortgage side of things is the Fed actually look at raising the Fed funds rate by 0.25% to drive down and eliminate this concern, this lagging concern of inflation. Inflation and mortgage rates are oil and water, cats and dogs, your two kids, forced like that, you know, or, you know, kids fighting like all the time, right? Give each other a hard time. It's the biggest issue for interest rates and affordability is inflation. Fed says, hey, we raise a quarter, we're going to take a strong stance on inflation, a really, really strong stance. It probably actually puts mortgage rates in a better spot longer term, but that's just my opinion. Don't actually listen to it. I mean, that's my entertaining thought. It's not serious.
It certainly has some logic behind it.
But there's all this information, right? It's a buyer or someone looking to enter the marketplace is getting inundated with news, getting inundated with crap news. And it's all meant to, this is my favorite word lately, is appeal to your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that's actually the caveman, make fire, we need warmth. But it makes you 2 times as sensitive to negative news as you are to positive news. So if you lost $4, it feels like you lost $8. If you made $2, it only feels like you made $1.
Interesting.
Yeah, but that's what buyers, you know, people are coming to it confused. And I think that you're probably seeing that when a buyer reaches out to you a little bit, Megan, I don't know what I want to buy, or I don't know how to figure out affordability. What does all this news stuff say, right? Like we talked about this before we got on, and CNBC just came out and said mortgage purchase demand dropped 10%. That's not even a real indicator, because that just is applications for the previous 2 weeks that have to get reported on a mortgage call report. It could be a million different things. What happens to these buyers that it took 155 days to find a property? So don't listen to the media. Talk to someone like Megan. She'll sing into a lockbox for you. All right, last bit here. So you've used Instagram. You've had a lot of fun doing that. You feel that it's made you approachable. What's your favorite video that you've made so far on there? Is it the rich girl one? Because that was my favorite.
Is that your favorite?
That one was my favorite.
That one might be my favorite. The rich girl one. Yeah. Mostly because it tells a story. It has some value. You know, sometimes I do these and I'm like, are people even reading the caption? Like, it's not just to like dance around in my living room and like look like an idiot. It's like, it's really telling a story. And so, you know, I don't know. I just feel like when you sit in front of a camera, like the one I just did yesterday, it's kind of stuffy because you're sitting there and you're like, just blah, 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 blah. And so these videos are supposed to be kind of fun and eye-catching, but if you read the caption, it's like, it's telling a real story. You know, it's a real life experience.
The story of someone saving $350 a month for the next 12 months because you negotiated a great deal for them.
Right.
That's $350 a month. I mean, that's actually almost 100 Starbucks blonde rows. if you're doing the math, maybe after taxes. Yeah,
it's my $225.
Well, you're Duncan. We got Big B on here. We got to represent the local places as well.
I like that.
All right, I don't know. I've covered a lot of stuff here. I don't know if I have any more questions even left on this. This thing we talked about. Seller pay closing cost. Oh, our favorite one. This would be a great one to close it with. If you had a billboard on, I don't know, we'll say on 41 here, on 294, on anywhere, and you could put whatever you wanted on there to advertise yourself, what is it going to say?
Oh, well, let me think. It's a good question. I guess it would say local. I'm a big fan of really driving that home because I am local and I love where I live. I love selling homes where I live. And so I like to stay true to my roots. So I'd say local for sure, loyal. I mean, you wouldn't see this sort of top producing emblem on my stuff. And the reason for that is just because, and not that there's anything against that at all. It's a great sort of, you know, badge to wear. But my focus is, you know, backing up. This industry is very numbers driven. It's very status heavy.
Hold on. We probably got to actually pause that. I've never heard that this industry's got numbers.
Which, you know, rightfully so. That makes sense, right? But just to my core, I like to measure my own success by client satisfaction and the level of service that I provide. And at the end of the day, it's important that we, position ourselves in this industry to be top producers, because typically that does equate to success, right? But just personally, I like to focus on my clients, the value I'm providing. I don't like to measure my success based on numbers. So whether I am selling a $200,000 house or a $2 million home, my clients will receive the same level of professionalism, service, and expectations that, they should be treated the exact same.
I love that. I think that's one thing that, I've been doing mortgages for a really, really long time. And one of my biggest struggles and biggest breakthroughs was selling up to particular people and thinking I had to sell down to particular people. No, it is the same way, right? You talked about your Sundays and your Mondays, right? I'm doing the same repetitive thing. The person's getting the same level of service. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks volumes to who you are, being genuine, being local, being loyal. And the top producer and the numbers things, like, I know some people might find this as a shock, but you pretty much can buy yourself on almost any magazine and put any number out there.
That's true.
But at the end of the day, and or fake flub numbers, like, in our world, the mortgage world, like, it's not uncommon for there to be this one loan officer that has these crazy numbers. And it's like, how does that person even physically do that? And it's like, well, they have a bunch of junior LOs that just close loans in their name.
Right.
And that probably happens on teams in the real estate world and all that other stuff too. And I think that can sometimes be the top producer versus top performer, right? There's a fine line between if a top producer can be a top performer. It's like tequila, right? I don't know if you're a tequila person, but I know Adam's got a good bottle on here that I put on here. But like, is it a mezcal? Is it a tequila? Like, can you be both? I think that you can be a top producer and a top performer, but you cannot not afford to be a top performer. Right.
So that's just it. And I think, again, you can be both. And I know some really great people in this industry that are both. But I also know people that are not both. Right. So I think people can get very easily lost in the numbers. Right. And we all need to make a living. We need a paycheck, and I'm no different. But I think that you take sort of there's an element that is removed from your business and from your brand, and from the level of service that you provide when you're numbers focused, and it's easy to get lost in it. And so I just try to stay fiercely grounded. And again, at the end of the day, once I close on a home, I am very heavy on feedback, client reviews. And that's what I like to really market, is just people really, I don't know, maybe that's a poll. Do they care if you're a top producer? Should I be plastering this on a billboard? But my thing is,
we still got that billboard that you got to, you got
to find the third word.
Well, you said you got to put the top producer on there, so
top performer. I'll put top performer.
Check my Google reviews. Check my reviews, or talk to someone that I've used or someone that's used me to represent them as a buyer or a seller, right?
Yeah.
I think your past client database speaks volumes to that. Right. All right, so I would agree that the focus on numbers is ill-focused. It's no different than the focus on waiting for the market, right? Trying to time the market. It's just not a possible thing. And then numbers are so skewed, right? You got into this business, you said 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So at a weird spot where we were in that spot of all-time great to nearly all-time low. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing we see in our business too. Like, I looked at something up the other day. I was talking to someone. There was 600% less loan originations in 2022 or 2023 compared to 2022.
Wow.
600% drop. Well, you can't measure anything. Like, I mean, that's basically, do you like sports at all? A little bit? Maybe.
I like them.
All right.
Don't ask me what I know about them.
All right. Well, how about this?
Go Taylor's boyfriend.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just say this, right? Like, let's just say like the NFL all of a sudden changed, and now you have 7-on-7 versus 11-on-11. Well, Taylor's boyfriend probably catches more passes, has more touchdowns. It's just if the rules change or the field changes, the goalposts get moved. It's impossible to measure that. So I would agree that right now measuring top performance versus top production as a consumer trying to get into the market is not the best bet. I would tell you, or tell a borrower or buyer, potential or seller, find a real estate agent that just aligns with you.
Yeah.
Right. It's an emotional process. There's no doubt about it. Right. It's highs, lows, everything in between. So having that person that you just identify with, you like, I can't stress enough, local, loyal, and earlier you said something, but you didn't say the actual word, but transparent.
Yeah. That's huge.
That's
Yeah.
And I think that's it. So we got on the billboard. Well, I don't know, how do we make, is there
Can
anything?
you make my billboard? I think can you do that?
Yeah, we'll see what we can do for you. But you got local, loyal, and whatever word that we can find
Your
in
trusted
a
local expert. I don't know.
in a thesaurus. Trusted? Yeah.
In a thesaurus. Yeah. Wealth of knowledge.
We need a thesaurus here to find out. Someone help us out with a L word for
Yes. Can you guys chime in and tell me what to put on?
yeah,
my
all 1.5 of you guys that are probably watching right now, but we'll get this up on YouTube.
Maybe some of my past clients will make my mantra for my billboard.
Anything else, Megan?
I don't think so. If you have any questions or want to chime in and ask, they can comment below right on the.
They can comment.
Yeah.
They can reach you at.
My cell phone is 219-888-0236. Follow me on all my social media.
Yeah. What's your tag? I don't even know what the tags handles, whatever they're called now.
You're dating yourself.
I'm a boomer, all right?
Meg sells and Meg MEG sells NWI.
NWI, Northwest Indiana.
Meg sells NWI. Local, right? Local and loyal.
And seriously, if you're not looking to buy or sell right now, but you just need some good, wholesome entertainment about the real estate world,
gotcha.
It is right here. No doubt about it. All right. Anything else? Nothing?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. It's been great. Seriously, though, we'll figure out a way to make sure you can follow our page so that your videos just get posted there all the time. If I find them funny, most of you guys know I have a pretty cynical approach to humor and comedy. But I do actually find these videos wholesome, funny, but they do tell a very, very important story. And it's not just a plug about, oh, look at me, I sold another house or that, right? It's, hey, I saved this person $350 a month for a year so that they can buy those Starbucks, Dunkins, Big B's, all that stuff. All right, well, that's all. We'll see you guys next week. I won't be here next week. I think Adam and Nick might be on. We'll figure it out. Till then, see you next Wednesday.